All right. Hey, everybody. This is Darren. I know what you're thinking. It says Matthew on Monday. It is Wednesday. So, right off the bat, just to let you know, we will hopefully return to the normal Monday slot where we've done Mondays with Mark and Lunas with Luke. And now we're Matthew on Monday. But I've got another book group that I'm meeting with on Mondays and just needed to change this for a little while. Hopefully, before Lent, we'll be back on Mondays. But anyway, so here we are. We are starting with an intro to Matthew this week, and we will be moving into a first lectionary text for Advent next week. We will be doing the genealogy instead of the apocalyptic text, but more on that later. Today, we just want to get a little bit of background on Matthew, but throughout the year A in the Christian calendar, we will be looking at different selected text from the Gospel of Matthew for that Sunday's gospel reading. So I hope you can join us. If you are here or if you're about to be here soon, it would be great if you could hit the thumbs up or like us somewhere on whatever platform you're on. Feel free to drop any questions or comments into the chat or the comment section on the videos. We'll be checking that as we go along, and I think that's about it. We welcome any questions or comments for sure. So, the Gospel of Matthew. Let's get started. I wanted to just start with a couple of general outlines that I've pulled from a couple different places. So let me show this one. Let's see if I can. Oops, there we go. I don't know if you can see that very well. Let's try one more bump up there. Okay, so this is kind of a basic. They call this chiastic structure, or the way there's many biblical texts, short pieces of text and larger. This is looking at the whole gospel. Have this structure where you can see A and B kind of pattern. I mean A and A stroke kind of pattern. So they're paired up, and then right in the center is kind of a meaty section to pay attention to. So here is one layout of the book, Gospel of Matthew, and you notice here on the side too is that through the text you have a bouncing back and forth between narrative, which explains some things that are going on, gives movement, from one place to another, that sort of thing, and then you have a discourse where Jesus speaks normally, and then you go back and forth, narrative discourse. So you can see here, birth and beginnings, chapters 1 through 4, blessings, entering the kingdom. That's the Sermon on the Mount, if you recall. Authority and invitation, mission discourse in 10, rejection by this generation, 11 and 12. Then right in the middle of 13, you have these the parables of the kingdom, and then acknowledgement by disciples. So you see here, for example, is a good example of this structure. So you have rejection by the generation, and then acknowledgement by the disciples. See how they how they pair up. And then you have mission discourse up here, and then you have in chapter 18 of Matthew a community discourse. So going out and going out into the world here, and then concerns internal to the church here, internal to the community here. authority and invitation, which matches up with the above, and then woes, coming of the kingdom, and then you see that pairs with blessing, entering the kingdom, and then you have death and rebirth that goes with birth and beginnings. So that's a kind of one kind of outline of the book that you could keep in mind as we go through. Next, you can see a more detailed example of this in usually just looking at the first section of the book that goes through 12:21, and I won't go through all of this, but you can see um, how this breaks down that early section of the book. And then here, these I'm pretty sure all of these outlines here come from Eugene Boring in his New Interpreter's um, New Interpreter's Bible Commentary series. His section on Matthew. It's a commentary on the whole that includes commentary on all the books of the Bible. And this is from his take, his commentary on Matthew. And then here's another way of looking at that structure, with some cool kind of hoops that draw out the parallel parts of it. And this one is a little bit harder to see, but it's kind of a very kind of detailed way of looking at all of these things together with the with part 1 of the book, as I said, 1 through 12:21. These tying together the Messiah, Jewish leaders, John the Baptist disciples, and Messiah again, Sermon on the Mount. You can see here the narrative, discourse, narrative about the miracles, discourse again, conflict, and then a narrative of discourse of parables, another narrative, discourse on community, and then another narrative about conflict, judgment discourse, and then a narrative about the passion and resurrection. So you see that narrative discourse pattern. You also see something else important to Matthew. You see conflict comes in many different places. And and this lastly, we will just make you aware of this kind of Fred Bruner has a big 2-volume Matthew commentary, and his is broken down theologically. So if you were interested in something like that, he has some doctrines here and ties them in with the chapters of Matthew. And then he goes through many different theological topics in the different sections of the book. And that's what his commentary spells this out as well, looking at these different elements of theology within the Gospel of Matthew. So that is that. And I see that Mark is here, so I'll bring him in. And not like that. I'll share the screen with you instead of just putting you over in the little corner there. Yeah.
Hey, what's going on?
Mark, how you doing?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. What's going on? Just counting down to the Thanksgiving, little break for Thanksgiving here in a little bit.
I hear you. I tell you, it's so funny because I was making appointments today with people, trying to get people to see when I could see them and talk to them and stuff. And I was sending things out, and some of the things had open dates on Thursday of next week, and they kept sending me emails back. It's Thanksgiving, man. What are you talking about? We're not meeting on Thanksgiving. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a little bit behind. There. Yeah. So
I missed your introduction when you was going over the structure. That sounded good. I saw that, just a little piece of it.
Yeah. No, there's some pretty good resources out there for looking at that. Looking at the structure of the text. But yeah. So I should probably mention to folks, we have kind of decided as we go through this that we're going to kind of use the Matthew and the Margins by Warren Carter as kind of something to bounce back and forth of as far as the text. I think Mark got himself a copy, and Marcy, I think, had one all along, and we'll see. Leonard hopefully will after the Christmas busy season. Hopefully Leonard can get in with us, or I think he knows he's welcome anytime. But
yeah.
But yeah. And so we can come back to this a little bit, but I want to, before we leave, just walk through a bunch of the different marginality kind of claims that Carter makes, because I think those are helpful to think about as you look through Matthew as we go through that. And I have them clipped here somewhere, so we'll take a look at that. But was there anything that kind of stood out to you from that intro part of the book? Or
I just really started reading in the margins piece. I read the introduction you had sent through the mail. Yeah. Why Matthew? Why now? I did read that.
Oh yeah.
And
that was Anna Case Winters, who's that?
Yeah. And you know what? I might end up getting that commentary too, because I like what she's saying here. So
I'm going to try to look at that one here and there too. So we can look at some of her stuff too if you want to, because she echoes some of the things he's saying as well.
Yeah, they do. And I think one of the things that that intrigued me is this whole conflict piece.
Yeah,
in terms of the internal conflict. And I think she starts out and she talks about when we look at the religious leaders and religious institutions, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, but the feeling I get from her is that the religious leaders, they certainly get a bad rap,
right?
And Matthew is intentional on that because he believes that they've let the community down. But I think initially she's saying that when we look at the whole Pharisaic movement, it doesn't. They start out with good intentions in that they're trying to create. I guess what's the word? I was trying to create some continuity in terms of their religious views. They're looking at I guess all the different pluralism of what was going on, and so they say that I guess they were thinking that if we're going to keep this community together, we need to have a common narrative, and so I guess the intention was good in the beginning, but I guess with both the commentators, I would say that they just got caught up in their own survival and their own selfishness, I guess.
Right. Well, I mean, and I think that no, I think that's really important, and I think it's important. It's an important interpretive way of looking at the gospel as we go through it.
Yeah.
Thinking now, because one of the pieces that one of the background pieces that's really important is that this comes. The gospel's written after the temple is destroyed.
Right.
And you have a strong, a strong Jewish community in this town of Antioch, in Syria, where, some suggest, some of the leadership would have gone as a place, as a place of refuge after the temple was destroyed in 70. And so you have not only, the typical thing of religious leaders trying to figure out what to do with, just in general, day to day, but you have a an extremely poignant crisis going on, where the whole structure of your religious system and its whole focal point has been destroyed, and has been destroyed by people who are pagans, or outside of your religion. And so I think that we have to we have to give some grace or whatever to
Yeah,
them,
I like that. I like
because
that.
they are literally trying to hold together
Hold
their
together.
tradition,
Yeah, try to hold together a community. I mean,
Yeah,
and what's and I guess what's so crazy is that these religious leaders, they were destroyed by the folks that they were in bed with to a certain
right,
extent, so
right,
but
right,
but we do have to give them credit. They're trying to figure how do we survive?
right.
How do
No,
we
exactly.
survive? Yeah. So,
No, exactly,
yeah, so,
exactly.
yeah, the survival piece is a main driving factor.
Right. And I think that, I think that for us, the way I think she even says this in the text, is how do we as people today read even this gospel as a call for us to rethink our communities and
Yeah,
our ways of being. Have we morphed into the Pharisees? Have we become that group for our own um
right.
for our own tradition, uh, in this time of crisis that we find ourselves,
Yeah, yeah,
uh, and if we don't think that we have, or we think we're on a different side, then how do we navigate that? But
yeah,
yeah, I think that will be something that we come back to as a way of thinking about our current situation as well,
yeah,
throughout.
and then you have the conflict, where you have the learned, the trained, learned
Right.
community theologians, scribes,
Hmm.
Sadducees, versus this uneducated,
Right.
um, uh, what should I say? Uneducated, um, uh, everyday person in Jesus.
Right.
So, so you have, well, we went to school, so we understand. This is
Hmm.
we understand theology versus Jesus is the new interpreter
Right.
of what's going on.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think that same we have the same conflict today. You, yeah, I guess you call it the elitism of those
Right.
who are learned versus those who,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, for sure. I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's, I think we see that clearly in our politics, that there's this class of people who are there to interpret,
right,
our everything for us, and they don't seem to understand anything that's going on
going
with
on,
with
right,
actual people, but they're the
right,
ones who we have to filter everything through them, because for some
right,
reason they've been chosen as the ones who, you know but I think that the what she talks about,
right,
the authority of ethical leadership, you know and so that question of authority, um, in the sense of who should we listen to,
right,
who's bringing us, um, the information and whatever we need to actually be a true community, a true people
right,
of God.
right.
That question comes up over and over again, and obviously that's a question that's around for us as well today. Is who or what do we look to for, you know guidance
Got
on
it.
how we live our
And
lives.
you have again the learned community says that you know this how we see God is the correct way, but those who are not as learned and who are struggling in the margins know we have a story to tell too.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And our story and our experience is just as valid
right,
as what you're saying.
right. Well, and also it seems again that there's a way that the the elite story dwells at a certain level of religiosity and, uh, ceremony to a certain extent, that doesn't get to, the actual issues of that might impact your hunger or
Yeah.
your or your ability to survive, or that, or how you're being oppressed by the people around you, that doesn't,
Yeah.
it asks you to perform a certain set of religious practices, but the kingdom, or the the thing that that God was calling you into before, where there's shalom and justice and all of that, doesn't
Yeah.
seem to get addressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, which again we can very easily relate to today, I think.
Like today. Oh, definitely for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Definitely for sure.
So well, maybe then, since we had that little, since we mentioned the kind of those groups, I thought this was an interesting little graph. It's kind of a little hard to see, but maybe it'll be
Okay.
helpful for people to look at. Um, I can't get this other part off the screen necessarily, but this is from Carter's book, where he talks about, you know this is the population, the size of the population down here, and then this the vertical axis is power, status, and wealth.
Right.
So at the bottom you have kind of unclean, degraded and expendables. You have slaves, which make up a huge population. You have
Yep.
day
Yep.
laborers, peasants, some merchant traders, artisans, that kind of
Yeah.
group. So you have a big, this is the big part of
Right.
the population. And then you have, you know, landowners here. You have the retainers and religionists. So that little group that we're talking about is kind of the elites here. Um, Governing classes, urban elite, and then you have the emperor all the way up here. So, and
Right.
then, um, you know, as you go, obviously, again, you get, as you go up this ladder of power, status, and wealth, you get smaller and smaller and smaller.
Right.
And as you go down that ladder, you get more and more population.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is
And I
kind of,
think a lot of people don't realize this part right here in the here. I think how a huge that was a huge population. I think um, I've seen the I can't remember what the Greek word is, but they were called the people of the land, which is
right,
your
right,
everyday struggling folk
right.
like Peter, like the fishermen,
Yep.
like the shepherds.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, they were part of that. That was a huge part of that population down there.
Right. Yeah. And literally, with very little recourse for, for any kind of power and
Right,
status,
right.
eh, basically had to revolt, or
Yeah,
or something like that, in order to get heard or listened to by anyone. And mostly that just led to being, you know murdered and put down. That
right,
was, it
right.
wasn't a lot of leeway
It
there
was
for
a
that.
struggle for survival, and that's why when we think about the Lord's prayer, to give us this day our daily bread. I
Yeah.
mean, that
Yeah.
really was the existential condition of a
Yeah.
lot of people.
Right. Right.
How am I going to? Today is Wednesday. How
Hmm.
am I going to make it through the day?
Right. Yeah. No, for sure. And then I think we have to, again, like with all of the gospels, it forces us to, you know consider how we're reading a story, told to people, and originally told about people who are in a different place than most of us.
Yeah,
Most of us, probably most of us listening or whatever, are in a different social location than the
right.
masses of folks that are being addressed here. So So yeah, I think those are, and that will set up a lot of the way that Carter will talk about this being on the margins,
Right.
the groups that Jesus goes to, the groups that Jesus ministers to, the groups that Jesus forms as a community around him, are from the margins of society and have to, are in conflict with the center,
Right. Right.
in many different ways.
Right.
So,
Right. And I think another thing that both commentators bring out, and something, Darren, that's really becoming um, more central as I think about the scripture, is the concept of empire.
mm-hmm.
That
Yeah,
empire is the huge shadow and the huge theme
right,
in the scripture, whether you're talking about um, Old Testament, Assyria, Babylon, Persia,
right.
then Rome. I mean, but we have to really consider the the the
Mm-hmm.
shadow of empire.
Right.
You know
Yeah,
how
yeah,
important that is.
right. And I'm going to send you, I'll send you this link to this little YouTube video that I was watching earlier this week, or maybe it was last week. I can't remember, but it's
Yeah.
it's an author, John Dominic Crossan. He's written quite a few different books, but he has a really interesting thing, a really interesting talk about this boat that they found in Galilee, in the Sea of Galilee.
Yeah.
And he talks about kind of the imperial background to Jesus' ministry,
Hmm.
and how Jesus goes from Nazareth to Capernaum in chapter 4 of Matthew's gospel. And it wasn't but a few years before that Herod Antipas moved his capital from Sepphoris up to Tiberias, up on the sea. So
Hmm.
there's this background of the empire and the empire's vassal, in the
Mm.
area, moving to the sea in order to exploit the seas, for the fish and all of that, um, so that there's a possibility of gaining more tax revenues, sending more tribute to the Caesars, so that he might gain more popularity and more
Right.
status in their eyes,
Right.
um, and might become, more fully king of the area, since he was sharing it with,
Yeah. Yeah.
with
Yeah.
other people. And it's interesting that as he makes that move, then when Jesus begins his ministry in Matthew, Jesus makes the move from the countryside in Nazareth, near where the old capital was, up to the up to Capernaum, right on the top of
Hmm.
the Sea of Galilee. And there's kind of this, the confrontation kind of starts there with the two, with Jesus siding with the fishermen, who are
Hmm.
the newly kind of, this newly exploited class,
Hmm.
for the sake of empire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that, so it's a pretty, that background is very fascinating to think about with Matthew as well. How the social conditions of the people are so tied in to with what the empire is doing.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And it means that we today have to be sensitive to, of course, we have to be sensitive to the things that people are going through, and be sensitive to the fact of how systems are in place that cause even further dehumanization. And
right,
and are we aware of what those systems are and how they operate?
right.
Yeah.
Well, and of course, just like with the issue of, the masses, or the crowds, as it says in the text, that Jesus is going to them, and we kind of come from this different social position. Um, the same thing with empire. We now sit in the center of empire.
Right.
We sit, as in the belly of the beast, as some
Right.
people
We
say.
do. We
So
do.
we are the empire,
Right.
now.
Yeah.
And so how do we read the text that was addressed to those being, under the thumb or under the boot of the empire, as we are the empire ourselves.
Themselves.
How do we hear the text
Yeah.
from that position, and what does it call us to? Because I
Else
think,
to do. Yeah.
yeah,
What is our response? And that goes, with Edlo has to think this whole Christian nationalism piece. The
yeah,
danger of Christian nationalism where we pretty much align, we interpret God through the lens of the empire.
right, yeah, yeah. Or we allow the empire to interpret God, to tell us who God is for us, or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, yeah. No, exactly. No,
Yeah.
I think that's exactly right. Yeah. So that does a lot. That has a lot to do with how we read the text as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And I think there's um, many moments in the text, but I think what Carter kind of argues overall is that instead of kind of maybe direct confrontation, calling out the empire in so many ways, what is offered is an alternative, an
Alternative
alternative
view.
community, an
Alternative
alternative
view. Right.
way of being in the world, that is a direct challenge to empire, but not, um, you know, not a military one, not a,
Right. It's not a, it's not a confrontation of empire in terms of
right,
you're wrong, but this is the alternative vision that we have for community. This is the vision we have, which offers
right,
life in
right.
spite of
Yeah, yeah,
what empire may do. Yeah, we will live fully in spite of empire.
right, right. I'm trying to see if this is a quote that I have here that I was going to read, or whether I just did a paraphrase. I can't tell. I can't tell which one it is, but well, if it's a quote, it's from somewhere in between pages 36 and 43
This is
in Carter's book. And if
Carter's
it's my
book.
paraphrase, then
I was trying to pull it back.
that's just me. But it says the gospel constructs an alternative world. It resists imperial claims. It refuses to recognize that the world has to be ordered by those. I now that my I can't read my own writing, but anyway, it creates an alternative community. It creates an alternative vision of the way to be in the world. So yeah, you may not hear Jesus, saying directly to a Caesar or a Pilate or a whatever, something, but the whole thing is is an offering of a different world. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we might look at it. I mean, we might come back to it later, but he talks about this advocating of a marginal existence, kind
Yeah.
of, how you have to kind of live certain contradictions. Like you can't totally escape that. You can't totally escape the imperial order. You have to kind of, you live within it because you can't
Right.
get all the way out of it, but you have to recognize the contradictions. You have to have your eyes, he talks about vision and seeing. You have
You
to
have to
have
be
your
able to
eyes
see and
open.
hear,
Right.
which is we see just as Matthews said all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
You have to
Yeah.
see and hear. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to be able to see those contradictions, even if you know that you have to, you have to live in them, most of us have to keep driving our cars, even though we know, you know, that ain't doing anybody any good,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and different, all kinds of things like that. But
Yeah.
there's that aspect of it. And then there's also trying little by little to create ways that we are living kind of against or
Yeah.
alternative to the imperial order as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I wanted to make sure that I think those are mostly the main things to just really kind of keep in mind. I think the idea of Matthew as a counter narrative to not only empire but also to a certain interpretation of the Old Testament tradition,
Right.
and then that so it offers this alternative, this counter narrative. It actually, in some places, tries to show how you create a community like that. Later on in Matthew, um, and then it's addressed to and comes out of people on the margins.
Right. I,
Advocates justice. Yeah.
And I guess I wonder some of the struggle with the issue with is that the gospel, like you said, tries to create a counter vision, a counterculture, if you will.
Yeah.
I would just wonder, have we assimilated too much in that are we missing that calling?
Yeah.
We are called also to create a counterculture.
Right.
We are also called to create a vision that's counter to
right
the way things are.
Yeah.
Have we just bought in too much?
Yeah. No, and I think that was part of what the we were talking about earlier with the Anna Case Winters commentary. Is that looking at the text, thinking about this internal dispute between the Pharisees and this community, or this, well, really this segment of the same community, right? So you really have the same. You're within the broader, faith tradition that comes out of Moses and all of that, but you have these two groups within that are trying to figure out how best to move on beyond the temple, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes for us, we find ourselves trying to think, okay, in this moment, which side, where are we? What are we closer to? Are we closer to those who ended up siding with empire? Are we closer to those who maybe were against empire but didn't have the call to justice and as well? So even in the, sometimes I think it's helpful to maybe try to see ourselves not just see ourselves in Jesus every time, to see ourselves in the Pharisees as well sometimes,
and
to
thinking
recognize
that as the Matthew community struggles to maintain this, to build this healthier counterculture, they had to deal with the everyday trauma that these folks dealt with every day. And Darren, one of the things I'm struggling with as we look at, I'm gonna just use Richmond here now. I mean or any area that's struggling with the crime and folks dying in the streets. That we have to find a way to engage folks, and when we do, we're going to engage folks in pain and drama.
Right. Yeah.
So how do we do that? How do we do that? Are we doing that? And how can we do a better job of doing it?
Right. Yeah. 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 There's
I'm thinking of I know somebody who's it's about we're on vacation. Their son was shot right inside their home, shot 14 times.
Oh my goodness.
And the mother of this particular person had some issues of going home to her own home.
Oh yeah, of course.
So you got that trauma, or what just happened in Charlottesville a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
That I haven't gone to UVA. I can imagine the pain of that the community, especially the African American student community, the
Right.
pain they're dealing with.
Yeah.
You know, how do we engage that trauma that trauma?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's maybe it's a helpful, it's a helpful reminder about, um, that, kind of the very material lived conditions of people, that they're going through.
Yeah,
It's not just, um, a theology that we think about, or or an intellectual argument
yeah,
about a certain topic.
yeah.
It's,
This is
you
flesh
know,
and blood. Yeah,
yeah. How do these
dealing with
people? Yeah,
yeah with
yeah.
with
No.
with crazy stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you think about this gospel includes the slaughter of the innocents, right?
right. Yeah,
That
yeah. Yeah, I mean, mothers and fathers saw their kids, you know,
right.
wiped out before them, you
Yeah.
know, and
Right.
for no apparent reason,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's well worthwhile. And I think you have to think about, I think sometimes we just imagine that Jesus goes to the people that he goes to just kind of on a whim or something, like that he ends up with, these fishermen at the bottom
yeah,
end of
yeah,
the, of the of this economic system, or
yeah.
he ends up, just happens to end up, with the woman who has the issue
It's
of
your blood,
blood.
and
you know
we don't talk about this a lot. And I don't. People might say this is bad theology. Maybe part of Jesus' ministry, he was driven by his own pain,
Mhm. Right.
and we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
as we look at Jesus' ministry, especially to who we minister to, hi- part of the reason why he was driven to the folks is his own pain of what he dealt with
Right.
in his
Right.
background.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I think that, yeah.
yeah.
I think
And
that's
as we do, and when we do ministry, part of the thing that drives us is our own pain, our own
right.
trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. Yeah. No, this should, yeah, I think that's worth, I think that's worth looking into.
Yeah.
Yeah. And keeping in mind as we go through. Um, and I think part of it, what it takes is, you know, um, stopping long enough with stories, with pieces of the text,
Hmm.
to really consider, you know, what the life of the people that are in this text might have been like,
Hmm.
to reconstruct it a little bit as much as we can,
Hmm.
and to kind of feel our way through it. Yeah. And I mean, and then you think about the community as well, you know, um, the community that Matthew is speaking to, or that the gospel is speaking to, you know, definitely is, everyone in that community is dealing with the trauma of
Of
the
loss,
of
that
the
means the
temple being
temple being
destroyed.
burned. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that, I think, I don't know who it is, or Carter or one of the other ones, talks about how in this city in particular, in going, like, you think about Palestine today, the going through the checkpoints, going, like, when the Jewish community went through the checkpoints to get over to the other parts of the city, like from where they kind of were, there were these, um, you know, things on the wall that I can't remember whether they said that they were taken from the temple,
Yeah.
or whether they were like representative of
Mhm.
the temple in some way, like just really flaunting the fact that Rome had destroyed their
Right.
temple. So they're walking past this every day. Every day
Yeah.
they're seeing, the reminder that that's happened to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's real, for the
Yeah.
for the for the folks, for the people who inhabit the narratives of the story, but also for, the community that hears the story.
Here's the story.
um
Yeah.
you know yeah, no, that's true, that's very true. Yeah. Well, let's see.
Excuse me.
Well, let's see. We got just a few more minutes. I'll walk through some of these things real quickly without too many of them. Let's see here. Where did I?
That must be you pulling this out of Carter's book. You said.
Yeah. I grabbed this out of Carter's book.
I haven't got to that part.
Yeah, this is almost the end of the section that I gave to us. But this is like this is kind of near the end. He just talks about the different ways that the community kind of embrace this marginality. So the second one, instead of commitment to the emperor as head of the empire, this community is to follow Jesus crucified by the empire. Instead of embracing the Pax Romana, this community encounters, proclaims, and prays for God's empire. Instead of understanding the emperor as manifesting the will of the gods, this community finds God's saving presence and will manifested in Jesus, Emmanuel. Instead of gladly embracing imperial power, this community is to critique kingship and leadership, and then instead of supporting imperial power as the sustainer of order, this community sides with the prophetic tradition in calling it to account. Looking at John the Baptist as well. Let's see here. So instead of emulating the exercise of power over others exhibited by the Gentiles and their great men, this community is to live as a community of slaves. Instead of maintaining hierarchical, patriarchal households, this community to embrace an alternative, more egalitarian household structure. Talks about taxes. Instead of using violence to retaliate, this community is to be committed to active, nonviolent resistance. Talks about an inclusive community. And then instead of seeking wealth to establish status, this community is to seek God's reign and use wealth in alternative life-giving practices of loans and almsgiving to those in need. So yeah, there's just 12 kind of key ideas that maybe we'll come back to a few different times throughout about how the community is to be an alternative to the empire. But yeah, I think those are good to think about. Yeah, for sure. Well, anyway, yeah, that's our introduction. We did it.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So you say you want to meet next Wednesday before Thanksgiving?
Yeah, that's fine. I think we can meet next Wednesday, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody will know that it's a big day off the next day, so they'll be fine. Yeah. Yeah. We'll look at the genealogy section, basically that first part of Matthew that runs down, all the begats. So yeah. And there's some interesting people in there,
Yeah.
So for sure.
Cool.
All right, and then Marcy promised to be with us next week.
Yeah. She had to travel. I thought she said she's looking at going back to school or something.
Yeah. She made her promises though, so we're gonna hold her to it.
Yep. Or make her bring us a Thanksgiving pie.
That's right. Maybe, yeah. Might be a little harder to get it to me than it will be to get it to you. But
yeah. Well, I heard y'all getting some cold weather up there, so y'all.
A little bit. Yeah, got the layers on.
Do you get the lake effect snows?
It's worse on the other side of the lake. Michigan gets more of the lake effect.
I think they're calling for some parts of the lakes, like Buffalo area. They're calling for 2 or 3 feet of snow from the lake effect. So
yeah, we're supposed to get a fair bit of snow this winter. They're saying, but I don't know whether that's true or not. Yeah. All right, Mark. Well, it was good hanging out with you again. It's been a minute. So yeah, we'll see how we go.
Okay. So we'll talk next week.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Take care, Darren.
All right. Talk to you.
All right.